All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Sorry it's been a while. Uh, Decided to do today's video webinar style, for funsies. Today we're going to be talking about quote book bans. I'm going to make a note here about the language I'm using. I've certainly met people who agree with me about how there are certain political narratives that are overrepresented in children's library catalogs, who use the term book bans to describe what they advocate for. I like to be very careful about the language that I use. So I always say something like, I advocate for responsible collection development. That phrase, it doesn't look nice on a bumper sticker, it's not like a viral kind of phrase, but it's more accurate. And I like to use accurate language. I think that's important. I don't like to cede ground that isn't deserved. So that is the term I like to use, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So this is an important document to know about. This is called the Library Bill of Rights. This document was created by the American Library Association in 1953, right in the middle of the Red Scare, and there are a lot of classical liberal ideas baked into this document, that they believe in the meritocracy of ideas, that you should be able to read about all sorts of ideas and they shouldn't be censored. In the modern day, librarians use this document, particularly Article 1 of the Library Bill of Rights, whenever their collection development decisions are challenged or questioned in any way. They just say, oh, Article 1 of the Library Bill of Rights, we can't exclude anything because of their views, right? And then Article 2 sort of falls by the wayside, which is they intentionally create a collection that overrepresents or completely excludes certain points of view. So this is where I like to get them on. So I've certainly met people in my life who are hang the Library Bill of Rights people, who are like, this document is a problem. This is what has allowed them to do political indoctrination campaigns with other people's kids. We should just get rid of this. I don't agree with the logic of this. And then I also just sort of don't agree with that strategically, because that plays right into the American Library Association's hands when it comes to the political propaganda campaign that they've been doing. It allows them to tie you into the Red Scare and Joe McCarthy and claim that that's who you are. But if you come at them like with Article 2 and you say, well, where are your points of view where are your other points of view? Where are the books in your catalog challenging this point of view? You've now put the ball in their court to say, well, we don't want that. Hang the Library Bill of Rights, right? So then they're Joe McCarthy now. All right, so let's continue. Right, yes. So as we talked about before, librarians violate Article 2 frequently and just are not called out on it as much. This is called self-censorship. So this has allowed the American Library Association to create this narrative where they say censorship is a conservative problem. Conservatives are just so terrified of ideas. And when in reality, books have to be on the shelves for them to be challenged. And if they are refusing to put these books on the shelves, they can't be challenged. And then later on in the webinar, we'll go over an example of left-wing censorship that the American Library Association, I don't want to say covers up, but intentionally doesn't highlight. We'll see that in a little bit. But here's a great example. I'll link this article that this is from. This is from WorldCat data. For those who are not initiated, WorldCat is a website that shows which libraries from all over the world, but mostly America, and mostly public and college libraries. Like you won't find like elementary school libraries on WorldCat. Which books have or which libraries have which books. And so you can see here, Maya Kababdi's frequently challenged, but among librarians fiercely championed a 2020 memoir, Genderqueer, 1,819 WorldCat member libraries worldwide, versus, which is a book that explicitly promotes the affirming view of gender identity, versus these books, which explicitly promote the critical view of gender identity, have much smaller numbers. And then I have a blurb here just talking about the report that I did. I'll link that in the bottom. It's on our website. I went through all of the elementary school catalogs in our county. 48 unique titles, all promoting the specific view of gender identity and none critical of it. This is a direct violation of Article 2. So I like to talk to them about that. And because that's not book banning. That is me championing the Library Bill of Rights and then me putting them in a position to tell me that they don't value the Library Bill of Rights. Or calling them out based on their actions that they don't value the Library Bill of Rights. Like, let's say I'm talking to an elementary school librarian about this and they say, fine, I'll buy a copy of Elephants Are Not Birds or whatever. That's great, but I shouldn't have needed to tell you, right? This is mandated in your policy. Y'all have been pretending at least, to champion this document since the 50s. Why did it get to this point? Why do I have to come to the school board meeting and tell you to follow your own policies, right? That's a problem. All right, so let's look at more WorldCat data. So, as we talked about before, the WorldCat data is showing us a lot of public libraries and academic, like college libraries. So it's not showing us any elementary school libraries. So that's a challenge, right? But I can tell you that all three of these books that I picked that share the affirming view are held by a lot of our elementary schoolers, or a lot of our elementary school libraries. And you see, these are really high numbers here. 1,473, 1,680. And then the critical alternatives are held by very small numbers of libraries. And then we can talk about challenges, complications, however you might say, to this data, and that we don't know why these books are there, if that makes sense. Like, the libraries that have When Aiden Became a Brother might have just chosen to buy it, like the librarians chose to buy it, versus some of the libraries that hold these titles, it might have been a suggested item, or it might have been donated. We have no way of knowing. I can tell you just from my personal experience in life that our county library is one of the 10 that hold this book because I bought it and donated it to them. Mandel Library in West Palm is one of the 194 that hold this book because I bought it and I donated it to them. But WorldCat does not share that information with us, so we have no idea. But, that represents a bias, obviously, because I, as a person that holds critical views, had to go out of my way and in certain cases spend my own money to make sure that those views are represented in the catalog, even though, again, I'm going to keep stressing it, they are mandated by the Library Bill of Rights to hold books like this, and they've just been choosing not to do it. And they're not getting in trouble. They're not getting called out on it. unless there are people in the community like me who go out of their way to challenge them about that. All right, so we talked about this before. I gave you a little sneak preview of this. I'm excited to talk about this. That when a book is challenged by left-wing people, it is intentionally not highlighted by the American Library Association. And there's a really great case study of this. This happened out in Maine. I'll link the whole New York Times article for you. This is a very fascinating article. This article lives in my head rent-free. So a librarian who runs the library in Maine, his name is Rich Boulay, accepted a donation for Irreversible Damage, which was a best-selling book that Abigail Schreier wrote. It was critical of gender identity beliefs, right? So right off the bat, at the beginning of this article, Rich Boulay admits to self-censorship. He admits that the library didn't purchase this book and that a patron had to donate it for them to get it. They absolutely should have purchased this book. Not only is it critically mandated under the Library Bill of Rights, it was a best-selling book. A best-selling adult nonfiction book that they chose not to buy. I want you to keep in mind as well that when I'm telling the story, this is a book for adults, right? This is not a book for children. And it's in the adult section of their library. So he accepts the donation of this book and puts it in the catalog. And there is swift and immediate backlash from his community. And it's not just politely filling out forms. Board members, library staffers, and himself are confronted in their personal lives at the grocery store, at the post office, and in their place of work. There's a really upsetting part of the book where a parent of a trans child comes up to Rich Boulay and accuses him of causing deaths of children for upholding the Library Bill of Rights by putting this book in his catalog, right? So this is not just a book being challenged. This is staff being actively harassed in their personal life outside of their place of business. Egregious, right? So then we have the American Library Association, Rich Boulay's professional association. He has been going to conferences and paying his membership dues like a good boy. And the American Library Association has crafted this whole brand around the fact that they will help you deal with intellectual freedom challenges and they believe in the right to read, blah, blah, blah. So he emails them and he's like, my staff are being harassed. I'm being followed into grocery stores. I'm being attacked. Like I'm being verbally accosted at my job and in my private life. Can you please support me? And they totally ignore him. And I think the most heartbreaking part of the article for me to read was, he later in the article, he says, it's all okay though, because months later, I was at the American Library Association conference and I ran into someone from the Intellectual Freedom Office and they apologized privately to me. What? You know, if I were this guy and I had been so brutally betrayed by my professional association like this, I would not be caught dead anywhere near the ALA conference. I would never support these people again. I'm sure he feels kind of chained to them because there's really no other alternatives to the ALA. And it's like important for your career, you know. There are other librarians that you network with and that get you published, and yeah, it's hard for you to just separate yourself from the ALA, even when they act a fool like this. Yeah, months later, they privately apologized to him. They should be apologizing publicly to Abigail Schreier, to every member of the community that they failed with their blatant partisanship. I mean, just totally egregious. And then another thing here that I highlighted is that the American Library Association launched this project called Unite Against Book Bans, where they have a database of books that are challenged and information about them as a way to assist the librarians in encountering challenges. So like if someone were to challenge irreversible damage, for an example, this book would have a page and it would say, this book was on the bestseller list, like, you know, but of course there's no page for irreversible damage because they don't want to highlight when gender critical books or conservative books are censored, because they want to create the narrative that censorship is a right-wing problem. And I would encourage you to explore this website. I can link it for you. Johnny the Walrus is another great example of books that are documented as being challenged, and it's not listed here. And then I included a little blurb here where it says, A Bad Kitty Christmas is one of the books put on this list, despite the fact that, yeah, no one has ever been yelled at in a grocery store over A Bad Kitty Christmas. This is narrative creation. There's like one person who fills out a form 10 years ago and they put it on this website like censorship is out of control, and then they intentionally exclude titles that don't fit into their partisan narrative in a way that's really perverse. All right. What to do when collection gaps cannot be filled. So I showed you in the previous slide, we'll just go back to it, some critical of gender identity titles, which assist you in fulfilling collection gaps. If we're talking about our lens of the school librarians, Johnny the Walrus is a board book. It's for younger kids. I would say that this is good for public, but not for school. Both of these, both My Body Is Me and Elephants Are Not Birds, are picture books that are great for schools, great for countering this view, the affirming view. And really should be every school that has even one title promoting the affirming view should have one promoting the critical view. So those are collection gaps in the collection that can be filled, right? But there are some gaps that cannot be filled because the alternatives don't exist. And I gave 2 examples. There are no gender critical books, picture books in Spanish. Brave Books doesn't have any books translated into Spanish. Johnny the Walrus has no Spanish alternative. I remember I had a great email exchange with Rachel Rooney, who wrote My Body Is Me, and we talked about publishing in Spanish. It's just that she had to, because certain publishing companies have become very partisan, she had to publish the book herself, and she doesn't have a lot of money. So publishing a book in Spanish takes money. And they don't, because that is a gap that can't be filled, removing books about the view is more ethical than creating a collection that only offers one point of view. So we should just remove those books, especially from the school catalogs. And I can just talk sort of briefly about my view on public versus school librarianship, and you can think about whether you agree with me or not. Most people I talk to about this are sort of on my side, but of course I've met people who don't agree. But basically, I can have an incredibly customizable experience for me and my child in a public library. I don't have to have any sort of relationship with the public library if I don't want to. I never have to take my child there. I can put books on hold and pick them up without my child there, or have my husband pick them up from work. Again, not ever allowing my child to go into a public library if I don't want to. It's reasonable for me to set up limiters for my child where I either follow them around the children's section and make sure they don't pick up books that I don't like, or I say, go pick out some books and then bring them back to me and then I'll approve them before we check them out. Again, I have the tools to have an incredibly customizable experience at public because I'm always there. But school libraries are a place where I have to send my child to some sort of school. It's not legal for me to I can homeschool. But if I have to work, I live in a high income area, so there are tons of people that have to have dual income households to be able to afford to live here. So in that case, you have to send your child to school. And it's also an environment you send your child to school and you are not there. You are not there to tell them not to pick up a certain book. You are not there to answer certain questions that are brought up, right? So if they have all this political content on the shelves, reasonably prompting the child with questions, and the only person who should be answering questions that an 8-year-old child asks about today's contentious political issues should be their caregiver, should be mom or dad, if school librarians, if someone else's 8-year-old comes up to you and asks you a question about abortion, gender identity, gun rights, the only appropriate response is to say, you should talk to your caregiver about that. You should talk to your parent about that. I don't feel comfortable talking to you about that. That is the only response you should be giving. You are in no way qualified to be answering questions about what you think about abortion, right? Similarly with teachers, your child's overworked and underpaid teacher should in no way be answering questions about abortion. But the issue is, let's say a child goes into the school library at like noon, is prompted to ask questions about abortion, and then there's no adult around to answer them. Are they just going to wait 3 hours until they see their parent? Or are they going to ask their peers? We don't want them asking their peers. Their peers don't know anything, right? Versus at public, if they are prompted to ask me a question, I'm right there. They can come right up to me immediately. Yeah, I have a much more conservative opinion about school librarianship simply because I'm not there. I've heard school librarians say things like, you can decide what your child is allowed to read, but you can't make that decision for other parents, that kind of thing. And it's like, in school libraries, there's no way for me to do that because I'm not there. How am I supposed to prevent my child from reading these books that you've irresponsibly collected? That's why you have to responsibly develop a collection. Okay, so also, there are no gender critical chapter books or graphic novels for older elementary school students. So if I'm an older child and I've moved on from picture books and I want to read chapter books, there's no options for me that preach the critical view. Yeah, so the responsible thing to do in regards to school librarianship would be to weed. Yes, so and when we're talking about diversity of view, I also think it's important to actually represent the views that people hold, So as I talked about before, I found 48 titles across all the elementary schools. But if we take just one elementary school, a lot of them have let's say maybe eight titles, all promoting gender identity beliefs. And we'd say, okay, well, we'll get elephants are not birds. Well, that's 8-1, right? The population of people in the country and in the county, this is a purple county, it's not a dark blue county. The population of people who hold gender critical views is huge. I'll link the poll data, I just have it memorized. It's 38% of Democrats and 89% of Republicans do not believe that you can identify out of your sex. The basis of being a transgender person is that you are a person identifying out of your sex. And 38% of Democrats do not believe that you can do that. And then this poll data I'm citing is old. It's from 2022, right? That number has certainly gone up. What they're doing by overrepresenting these views in the catalog is creating the illusion that more people believe in these beliefs than they do, in a way that is unethical and thought control and not good, As I just talked about, if I were a school librarian, I would just omit these ideas and leave it to public and encourage the people in public to hold diversity of view and to make their services as accessible as possible, which our public library does a great job of doing. So, but let's say I had to I was forced to represent these views in my catalog. This is probably how I would do it. It would be balanced, 2 for 2, right? 2 books promoting the affirming view, 2 books promoting the critical view, 50-50. And then I tried to make them sort of comparable. Like, My Body Is Me is a nonfiction book about, like, philosophy, about how some of the basic claims in transgenderism are that your brain is you and you can change your body to more reflect what's inside of your brain. And then My Body Is Me is a direct refutation of that, where it says, no, my body is me. My body is not separate from me and needs to be changed. My body is me. So this refutes the claims made in It Feels Good to Be Yourself. And then Elephants Are Not Birds is fiction, and I Am Jazz is like an autobiography, but I feel that they are comparable because they're about a subject that feels not at home in their body, and there are 2 different ways of dealing with that. Yeah, it's not perfect, but this was a fun thought experiment. If you're a librarian and you're watching this might be a fun thought experiment for you to do. But yeah, there would be no Spanish titles because there are no Spanish critical alternatives. There would be no middle grade chapter books because there are no middle grade chapter books alternative. I can also say that librarians, you should be empowering and working with publishers like Brave Books. Brave Books makes Elephants Are Not Birds, because if let's go back to the slide where I talk about WorldCat numbers, 117 libraries. If this book were held by 1,680 libraries, Brave Books would have a lot more money, and they would be willing and they would be able to publish their books in Spanish, and they would also be able to age up and publish some graphic novels and some chapter books for the middle grades. They're not able to do that because they don't have as much money as Simon and Schuster. But yeah, I mean, the way that libraries have treated Brave Books is so ridiculous, especially because they're helping you. They are providing an extremely necessary service to you. They are helping you fill collection gaps that you should care about, and you shouldn't care about the collection gaps just because there are people like me in your communities who are demanding that you care about collection gaps. I've said it before, I'm just going to say it again. You are mandated by the Library Bill of Rights to care about this gap in your collection. You're not mandated by your community who has to come to you and tell you that's why Library Bill of Rights was created, is so people like me don't have to exist. You're supposed to do this work for me. Yeah, so you don't like that there are collection gaps. What you need to be doing is developing relationships with Brave Books and calling out the school library journal and book list and people who write reviews for books and tell them, hey, you're making it really difficult for me to fulfill what I'm mandated to do in the Library Bill of Rights because you've become really partisan in the books you're willing to review. So can you please work on that? Can you please recruit and hire and retain and empower conservative book reviewers? Can you please work with Brave Books so that I can do what I'm mandated to do? There are gaps, but they don't have to exist. You as a librarian are not powerless. That's a big part of what these conferences are supposed to be for. The people who publishers and book reviewers and suppliers of books to librarians all come together at these conferences so that you can talk to them and share what you would like to see from them in the future. And it would, if all the librarians in the country, not all of them, if a large portion of librarians in the country came together and all told these people, hey, please work on being so partisan. Please try and stop being so partisan. You're making my job difficult. You could instill change in these organizations, basically. All right, so, and then this is a case study that we're going to do. I'm excited about this. The ethics of political books for kids. So, there's a lot of talk about, and then there were laws passed about appropriateness for children. And that's sort of in regards to like overtly sexual content or overtly violent content or explicit language, stuff like this. And there were certainly problems going on with that in librarianship, but that none of those laws or none of those issues address things that are like overtly political like this. So here are some overtly political books about abortion, explicitly promoting either the pro-life or the pro-choice view. I don't think any of these books should be in school libraries. I think parents should, if parents want to teach their children pro-life or pro-choice values, they should be doing that in their own time. I don't necessarily have a problem with these books being in public, though. As long as, again, there's a diversity of view. But I'm sure that there are people who would really disagree with me on that, and I'd be happy to talk to them and debate with them about that. Our county library doesn't have any of this. You know, they've got no picture books about abortion for kids. I'm sure they don't feel compelled to do it. And as you can see here, the numbers are really small. But they're comparable. 1925, 109, 104. Let's Talk About Abortion is a new title. It just came out in 25. I didn't know about this until I started. I've done this search before, but it's been a while. And I thought as well that we could look at some catalogs so you could see. Hennepin County Library is the county library for Minneapolis. They just had the Public Library Association conference there. Minneapolis is obviously an extremely dark blue area. They have both of these children's books about abortion. 16 copies available. You know, most of their branches, if not all of their branches, have a copy of this book. They don't have diversity of view about this for children. And I understand why. Like, I'm sure that they feel there isn't a demand for it because this is a dark blue area and people are there are just so few pro-life people around. And, but we could have an argument like, is it more important to represent conservative views in a dark blue area like Hennepin County? Maybe, you know, but I certainly understand. I'm sure I could have a conversation with a librarian who works here who's like, I don't want to spend money on books that nobody cares about. Yeah, okay, but also, what about the Library Bill of Rights, you know? You need to care about the Library Bill of Rights, especially because your professional associations have been weaponizing it in this way. That you need to care about the whole thing. And then, something I wanted to look at here was I wanted to show you how it was cataloged. Oh, another thing I wanted to show you is that, look, the book list reviews this book, and so is Publishers Weekly. And they're not reviewing the pro-life alternatives. It seems very blatantly partisan. Okay, so if we look at the way that it's cataloged, it's interesting. I wish it was cataloged to show that this is a pro-choice book. It just says abortion. And then we can compare how some of the pro-life books are cataloged. So we got this Greene County in Ohio. Right, so what did I search for? Little Lives Matter. They've got Little Lives Matter. It doesn't have a picture. It should have a picture. Books that don't have pictures don't circulate as much because of the attention economy. I really hate this. Elizabeth Johnston, parentheses, conservative activist blogger. That's not appropriate. Just put her name. And then let's look at how it's cataloged. This Little Lives Matter is less like explicitly pro-life, but I mean it is very pro-life, and you can see it doesn't show up. Like if we typed in pro-life or we typed in abortion, it wouldn't show up. We would have to know that this title exists, right? And then they also have pro-life kids. So let's look at how pro-life kids is cataloged. 2 copies as well for this. This is a large library system. So pro-life kids, there's a picture here, which is good. This is interesting to me. If I typed in abortion, it wouldn't come up. But if I type in pro-life, it would come up. Pro-life movement. Versus if I type in abortion at Hennepin County, the pro-choice book would show up. So I find that intriguing. There's always a question in librarianship about how things are cataloged. There's a whole movement in modern librarianship called the critical cataloging movement, which I refer to as the coercive cataloging movement. Essentially, what they do is they catalog things to promote a certain political belief system, a certain social justice political belief system. They try to subtly do thought control through the catalog. It's wildly unethical. Emily Jabrinsky, who is a former president of the American Library Association, wrote an entire PhD thesis called Queering the Catalog. It is a horrific read. It represents everything that's wrong with modern librarianship. And then I just wanted to show you, so this is Pro-Life Kids. We just explored how it's cataloged, and this is another library that has Pro-Life Kids, Wichita Falls. And I'm going to show you how in this catalog, it's cataloged differently. See, in this catalog, if you type in abortion, this book shows up. And it also doesn't mention religion here at all, right? So at green, it says Christianity pro-life movement. And this says moral and ethical aspects of the pro-life movement. Fascinating. Very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is it ethical for public libraries to hold books like this? Is this a service we should be providing to people? Because I could see the arguments for it. Like, pro-life values or pro-choice values are so important to certain parents that might not have the means to just buy these books, that the county should be providing this service. As long as they're also providing diversity of view. Yes, okay. Refuting some counter arguments. Right. So, am I supposed to get books about flat earth theory to counter nonfiction about the solar system? That's unreasonable. I agree that is unreasonable. Ways that you would know whether you need to provide diversity of view or not are based on things like how many people hold the view and the political power of people that hold the view. So there is a very tiny percentage of people who believe the earth is flat. These people have no political power whatsoever. And it's not a hugely contentious issue in our culture. When we're talking about gender identity, as we talked about before, a huge percentage of people hold these views, hold gender critical views. And also, this is a group of people who have a lot of political power. And something you can cite that I like to say is when Donald Trump got inaugurated into office, his very first day in office, he put out an executive order saying, we are not recognizing transgender identities. You are the sex that you were assigned at birth, which I don't like that term. It's an ideological term. You are the sex that was established at your conception. You can't identify out of your sex. So he, upon his first day in office, immediately addressed this issue at the federal level because this was so important to so many people in his base. So if you're a librarian and you're lost about like which diversity of views you should include, you can look at how many people hold the view, search up some poll data. It's not difficult to find, and how and the political power of the people who hold this view. And I feel like anyone who hasn't been living under a rock knows this. They are just trying to use weaponized incompetence against you and hoping that you're going to fall for it. Don't. Okay, so transphobia and bigotry has no place in my collection or in the collection. I have never met a librarian dumb enough to say this to me, because they know that's directly in violation of the Bill of Rights. You might meet like a leftist parent who says, I don't want transphobia in the collection. And then you can just cite the Library Bill of Rights, Also, I think I will say things as well. Like, if you think gender critical views are so easy to discredit, then what's the harm of having them in the collection? If anything, it'll just strengthen your gender affirming views, right? By testing the counter argument, right? If you're so confident that gender affirming views are the only logical way to go. Okay, and then I think that this will be the most common one. My collection policy says that I can't buy books that aren't reviewed by Booklist, Kirkus Reviews, or etc. And none of those books are, or something like those books are not available via my vendor, right? What I would say is, can you point to me where in the Library Bill of Rights it says that it's okay to violate the Library Bill of Rights if your suppliers and book reviewers are not making it easy for you? No, you can't. Nowhere. The Library Bill of Rights is not optional because the people that you've chosen to partner with are making it difficult on you. You need to figure out a way to fulfill the Library Bill of Rights. That's on you, right? So, and as we talked about earlier, Booklist is ran by the ALA. Go talk to these people. Meet with your rep and be like, you're making it really difficult for me to uphold diversity of view. Please work on this. And the more librarians who do that, the more willing they'll be to listen. And also, if you have created a collection policy that makes it impossible for you to fulfill the Library Bill of Rights, that's your fault. Change your collection policy. Very simple. So that works for both of these things. I know this is a lot of text. I was just sort of thinking you could take a screenshot of this if you're interested. Julia, I'm a lonely school librarian. How am I supposed to fix all these deep-seated problems in my profession? Great question. Here's the path forward. Here's how to prevent the intense partisanship that has infected this profession from happening again, and how to fix it. Number 1, recruit, retain, empower, and publish conservative librarians. Librarians are not fighting for diversity of view because they don't hold these views. I feel motivated to fight for gender critical views because I hold gender critical views. So if you go out of your way to find people who hold these views and make them feel that their views are not shameful and unwelcome, then you'll have people who are more willing to help you in your quest to fulfill the Library Bill of Rights. Number 2, call out partisanship when you see it. Go to your conferences. Talk to the people who you work with, your partners, your book reviewers, your publishers, your suppliers / distributors, the people who work at the Library of Congress. Call it out. Partisanship leads to violations of the Library Bill of Rights, and you should be doing what you can to promote workplace culture that treats violations of the Library Bill of Rights as a betrayal of the community, a dereliction of duty, unprofessional, unethical, bad, right? And if your distributors or your suppliers do not care about diversity of view, about the Library Bill of Rights, diversify them. Have some that go out of their way to work with smaller conservative publishers so you can get these books, so you can do your job, so you can uphold the Library Bill of Rights. Yes. Ask your professional associations for training to help you identify and combat partisanship. Sometimes it's hard to see because bias is hard to see if they're your biases. You need training. that needs to be reinforced and revisited to help you deal with that. Yes, I basically already addressed number 5, is that if you, in your personal, professional life, make it a priority to commit to all 7 articles of the Library Bill of Rights, you are working to create a workplace culture that views violation of the Library Bill of Rights as sinful, as bad, as very unethical. And then probably an overlooked one is advocate for ways to reduce the educational costs and time to become a librarian. Yes, I think a lot of librarians lean left because you have to get a special master's degree to become a librarian, and it's expensive, and librarians don't make good money. They make like $55K a year. They make garbage money, right? So it's appealing to them when the Democrat Party says, oh, do you have all of this student loan debt and it's hard to pay off and it's making your quality of life bad? We'll just have the taxpayer pay for that for you. And then conservatives are like, well, we don't really think it's fair that blue collar workers who chose a different path for their life have to pay for your decisions. Like, they didn't sign on to those loans. That's not fair. So if you get rid of the problem, or if you advocate for ways to not make it so expensive, then people would be less likely to be intrigued by this idea that, oh, we'll just have the taxpayer pay off my debt for me. All right. Well, that's the end of that video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you don't agree with me, maybe it would be a good exercise for you to sit down and really flesh out why you don't agree with me. All right. Bye.